All right, today we're going to dive into something that sounds like a compliment, but is actually way more complex. We're talking about the psychology of the easy child.
Have you ever heard that you were just so easy? It's meant to be one of the best things a parent can say. It means you were quiet, you were cooperative, you didn't cause any trouble. But what if that easiness wasn't really about your personality at all? What if it was a story of survival? So that's what this is all about. We're going to look at this from a completely different angle. We're going to reframe that whole easy child label, not as who you were, but as a really, really smart adaptation to the world you grew up in. So I want you to just kind of keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through this. Was your easiness really you? Or was it a role you learned to play, a performance you had to put on to keep things calm and safe? That's the big question we're unpacking here. Okay, so to get it, you have to look at the why. You have to look at the environment. Because this whole dynamic of the easy child, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's usually created in a home that has this undercurrent of pressure or instability. And these factors can look so different. It could be a really high-stress house where the tension is obvious. Or it could be much quieter. Maybe your caregivers were loving but just emotionally not there. Or maybe you had a sibling who had really big needs and they just took up all the oxygen in the room. Whatever it was, the feeling was the same. Things felt fragile. And this right here, this is the kid's logic. It's brilliant, really. When you can sense that the whole system is already overloaded, you make a very smart subconscious choice. Don't be another problem. So you learn to make yourself small. You learn to handle all your big feelings and all your needs by yourself quietly.
And that's the key. This is a survival strategy. It is not a flaw, it's not a character weakness, it's actually proof of a child's incredible ability to read a room and figure out the safest way to navigate it. It's a coping mechanism. That's it.
So how does a kid actually do this? How do you become easy? Well, it's not a passive thing at all. It is an active, full-time job that requires you to develop a really specific set of skills. Let's call them the skills of silence.
This slide, this really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? On the outside, what did the adults see? A calm, mature, happy kid. But what was the internal reality? That calm was actually you constantly scanning the emotional temperature of the room. That independence, that came from believing you had to solve every problem alone, because asking for help wasn't an option.
And these are the skills you mastered. You became an expert at sensing a mood shift before anyone even said a word. You learned to just swallow your own feelings. You became hyper-independent almost to a fault. And of course, you learned that avoiding conflict and keeping everyone else happy was the path of least resistance.
Man, this quote is just so powerful. It perfectly explains why, even as an adult, it can feel impossible to just relax. Because if you grew up in a place where things were unpredictable, your brain learned that quiet wasn't safe. Quiet was the calm before the storm. It was a reason to be even more on alert. Sound familiar? Right. So, those survival skills that you got so good at in childhood, they don't just disappear when you move out. They come right along with you. So what does that look like? What's the legacy of all that easiness in adulthood?
And that brings us to being a grown-up. This is where all those childhood patterns start showing up in brand new ways. The super independent kid often becomes the fiercely self-reliant adult who's struggling in ways that nobody else can even see.
You can basically draw a straight line from then to now. The kid who learned to push down their feelings, that's the adult who, when you ask them, hey, what do you need? They honestly have no idea. The kid who had to do everything themselves, that becomes the adult who will struggle for weeks before asking for a simple favor. And that radar for everyone's mood? Well, now it's social anxiety, replaying conversations over and over in your head, looking for what you did wrong. And at the very bottom of it all, this is the feeling that sticks. This deep, deep belief that your needs aren't inconvenience. That just by wanting something, whether it's help or support or just attention, that you are fundamentally being too much. And that is such a heavy thing to carry around. But here's the thing. This is not where the story has to end. Not at all. The most powerful thing you can do is to start reframing this whole experience. What if we stopped looking at these as flaws and started seeing them for the incredible strengths they actually are? Let's really look at this shift. The old story says, I'm a people pleaser. The new, more accurate story is, I am deeply empathetic and I am highly skilled at keeping the peace. The old story says, I can't ask for help. The new story says, I am unbelievably resourceful and capable because I had to be. See the difference? We're not making excuses, we're honoring the skill it took to survive.
If you walk away with one thing today, please let it be this. You were never a child without needs. You were, and you still are, a person with a massive capacity to observe, to adapt, and to survive. Your quietness was never an absence of you, it was a strategy.
So, the final thought here is that your story, it's not about being a problem or being a burden. It's a story of your own resilience. It's about the incredible strength you had to find to protect yourself and make your world feel safe. And that, right there, is a story worth telling.